The 2025 Formula One World Championship was decided by just 2 points. Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri were both worthy champions, but there were moments throughout the season where, had things gone just slightly differently, the outcome could have completely changed. And no, Spain wasn't the only reason Verstappen lost the title. Formula One seasons these days are extremely long, 24 races long, and over a season that big, there are a million different scenarios that could have reshaped the championship. But there's no denying that there are a handful of moments that, in hindsight, clearly stand out. Moments that may have cost each driver the title, assuming everything else stayed more or less the same. Verstappen had about as close to a perfect season as one can get, and honestly, there were only 2 major moments where Verstappen himself clearly left points on the table. The first was Spain. This was the infamous red mist moment. Verstappen turned what should have been a P5 into a P10, losing valuable points in the process. This race exposed Verstappen's one real weakness. When he feels out of control of his destiny, whether that's due to the car or a team decision, he can occasionally lose his composure. A lot of people point to Spain as the moment that lost Verstappen the championship, and while it absolutely didn't help, it was just one moment that was fully in his control, and arguably not the biggest factor over the course of the season. A second moment in Verstappen's control was during the British Grand Prix. This was a rare, uncharacteristic mistake from Verstappen in extremely tricky, wet conditions. He spun on the safety car restart, dropping from what would likely have been second down to 5th. Again, points left on the table, but still not entirely the whole story. While those races did matter, I actually think the bigger reasons Verstappen lost the title were largely outside of his control. The most overlooked factor is simple. For a large portion of the season, the Red Bull was lost in its development, and it was not competitive with the McLaren. McLaren had the quicker car for most of the season, and particularly during the beginning and middle stretch of the season. It was really only towards the end, once Red Bull continued development and McLaren stopped, that they were able to claw performance back. Had Red Bull not lost so much ground mid-season, this championship could have looked very different. Hungary is a perfect example. The pace just wasn't there, and it was a bad weekend from Red Bull as a team. There were also key incidents completely out of Verstappen's hands outside of the pace of the car. The biggest was his DNF in Austria after being taken out by Antonelli. No, he probably wasn't on for the win, but he still lost a massive point haul. Mexico is another one that often gets overlooked. An unfortunately timed VSC cost Verstappen 3 points in a title fight that was decided by 2. So when you zoom out, yes, Verstappen had moments he could have optimized better, but more importantly, it was Red Bull's mid-season performance drop and a handful of unlucky incidents that really cost Verstappen the championship. Before we get into the reasons why Piastri lost the title, let me know down in the comments below who you think will have the strongest engine come 2026. The season is right around the corner, and we've already heard some engine fire-ups, so it's getting excited. Also, give the video a like and hit that subscribe button to see more F1 content as we get into the new season. Now let's talk Oscar Piastri. Realistically, this championship was Piastri's to lose, and boy did he. There are multiple moments throughout the season that, in hindsight, clearly swung the title away from him, the first being in Australia. While this was obviously early in the season, first race of the season, this one still looms large. A P2 turned into a P9 after a mistake in the rain saw him spin and get stuck in the grass. That's 16 points lost, literally the same gap that he finished behind Norris, and obviously there's a whole season in between that, but that's a big moment. To be fair though, this could have happened to anyone. Norris also went off, just not as dramatically, but in hindsight, it was a massive loss for Piastri. Next was the British Grand Prix. This was another one that was largely in Piastri's control. A controversial penalty behind the safety car meant he finished second behind Norris instead of winning the race. That swing mattered, of course, for the points and also just for momentum. And then there was Monza. Monza was a key turning point for both McLaren drivers. Team orders cost Piastri 3 points, which doesn't sound like much, but Piastri himself admitted it played a mental role for the rest of his season. And those 3 points ended up being absolutely crucial for Norris at the end. Next, looking at the weekend that Piastri and any Piastri fan wants to forget is the Baku weekend. What can we even say about Baku? This was by far Piastri's worst weekend of the season. He had multiple mistakes, a DNF, 0 points, and a massive confidence hit. He lost ground to both Norris and Verstappen in a single weekend, pretty dramatically. Then came another papaya rules incident in Singapore. Another semi-controversial papaya rules moment where Norris barged Piastri out of the way. Personally, I didn't have a huge problem with it, but within McLaren's own fairness framework of those rules, Piastri did have a legitimate argument for it not being fair. Next, we have the United States Grand Prix at Austin. This one proved disastrous. Piastri wiped out himself and his teammate in the sprint race, scoring no points while also losing a ton of ground to Verstappen over the course of the weekend. Come race day, it continued to get worse. He lost another 8 points to Norris and 15 to Verstappen. At this point in the season, Piastri and McLaren in general were really just hemorrhaging points to Verstappen. And then came the nail in the coffin for Piastri, Qatar. McLaren's bot strategy cost Piastri the win, cost him confidence again, and meant he scored just 6 points on Norris instead of 13, while also losing more ground to Verstappen. Similar to Verstappen, but for very different reasons, the real nail in the coffin for Piastri was his catastrophic loss of pace from roughly Singapore through Qatar. At that point, he was just absolutely hemorrhaging points. The earlier mistakes hurt, no doubt, but it was that sustained drop-off in performance that truly cost him the championship. Had Piastri found his pace back even 1 or 2 races earlier, this entire title fight could have looked entirely different. When championships are decided by just 2 points, it's never just one moment. It's a collection of small decisions, mistakes, and circumstances stacking up over 24 races. Verstappen lost the title largely because his car just wasn't good enough for the entire course of the season. Piastri lost it because he made too many costly mistakes and then lost form when it mattered most. And that's what made the 2025 season so compelling. 3 different drivers battling it out for the title, each of them having their own strengths and weaknesses, and the ebb and flow of the season just continued from the beginning to the end.